underrated players in the league. We came up with 5 players who we think that should just get more recognition on their name. Number 1, Connor Garland of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah. So this was a player I saw kind of raising some eyebrows with the extension that Vancouver gave him at $6 million a year. They're like, Connor Garland, $6 million a year. Look at his numbers. He is one of the best defensive forwards in the league. He could also put up like 50 points.
Well, he could give you 60 points and be one of the better defensive forwards in the league.
So I think him at $6 million a year. What was it, like a 6x5?
It's 6x6, I think.
I think that is honestly a great contract. I think if he would have, I know he had a year left on his deal this year, but I mean, you can't pass up the money. But if I was him, I would have played this year out. You could have got a lot more money.
Dude, you could have gotten 7.5 if you played like how you did the last few seasons.
Yeah, but you can't pass up the money in the term when it gets offered to you. Yeah, he had 50 points last year in 81 games for Vancouver. Yeah, he's a really important player to their team. Like I said, he's been an analytical darling for the last few years, and just look at his defensive numbers. So they're great.
97th percentile in defense. His offense could be a little bit better, but again, a lot of players just have roles in the league. Not everybody's going to be the same player. You have Garland, who he can give you offense.
But he had
can
50
give you
points last year. Like he's meant to be more of a defensive two-way forward, and you're getting 50 points out of him. That's still amazing.
That's great. And one of the brighter spots in the Vancouver Canucks dumpster fire.
I think the biggest thing for Vancouver going to this year, because I don't think they're going to be great anyway. They'll be like a fringe wild card team, but they were able to kick Brock Besser. Their scoring would have fallen off a cliff if he would have walked to free agency.
Yeah.
And then you keep Connor Garland for 6 more years, and now you have those guys locked up long term, and now you can start to make some other moves. I think those are like big foundational assets for them to hold on to.
And now you also ended up extending Demko. If he stays on the ice, he's a top
that
10
contract is kind of. I'm still iffy on that contract,
still
especially
50-50.
with the full no movement clause, because we were trying to like justify it, and we're like, well, maybe they'll just trade him in a year. You know, the teams won't have to worry about negotiating a contract. No, he has a full no movement clause, so
yeah, they're
really banked in on him not being hurt. Because I agree, when he's healthy, he's great, but he has not been healthy.
It's a big if because he hasn't been. The only season he's been healthy for a full year, I think, was 22-23, and then he got hurt in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
and then they trade Shelovs away, who I think was a good prospect to Pittsburgh.
For like nothing.
Yeah, for practically nothing. I mean, he could end up being nothing, but if he ends up being a solid star in the league, you look like an idiot.
Like I remember when Demko extension happened and we went out with Jimmy and Zach and we were trying to justify it. We're like, oh, like, maybe this is where in a couple years they trade him and Shelovs is the backup. Well, I mean, the starter. Well, first off, no movement clause. Second, they traded Shelovs like 3 days later.
Yeah.
And we're like, what the fuck is the plan? But either way, though, Connor Garland, he deserves some recognition.
Yes, for sure.
Jake McCabe is next up on our list, a defenseman for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, defense, it's solid, right? But his offensive game and his puck-moving status.
Yeah, I didn't
really
realize he'd be that high offensively. I always thought he was kind of underrated. He played in Buffalo for a very long time, and I mean, they sucked. Yeah. So his play was always going to go under noticed. And he was in Chicago for a few years, and then Toronto ended up giving up a good amount to get him. I remember a few years ago.
Yeah,
and he can play top pair minutes. He's a solid second pair defenseman though. He eats time. He plays over 21 minutes a night for them. I think he's a very important piece to this team, and I think he's one of the reasons why Toronto is, I think, going to maybe make the next step next year.
Next up, we're talking about Eastern Conference Finals.
Yes.
Like genuinely from the bottom of my heart, and he's the guy that he can play on the power play, can play penalty kill. If the net's pulled, he can be out there.
Yeah, he's comfortable no matter what situation.
Which is crazy because you don't look at Jake McCabe as a guy that will give you substantial minutes a night half the time, but Toronto trusts him. Berube really trusted him.
I think Craig Berube's been really good for him.
He has been good for him, and overall, Jake McCabe is another guy that, if he was on some other teams, potential first-pair defenseman at times. Obviously, depending on certain circumstances, but a very good second-pair guy. Warren Foegele next up on his list, a very underrated defensive forward. I didn't realize he's in the 96th percentile.
Yeah,
That's
it was
crazy.
A big loss when Edmonton lost him in free agency. They just couldn't afford to keep him. But yeah, Warren Foegele is one of the. He's kind of been one of those guys that has really risen the last few years. I think when the Oilers got to the Stanley Cup final a couple years ago when he was on the team, I think that's when people kind of started to notice how good he was, and then LA picks him up as a good depth piece, and he's a super important piece on this team.
Everybody didn't bet, and I was like, oh, depth piece, whatever. And he excelled in LA.
Yeah,
And I love it that Fogle, when he was in the LA Kings locker room, and something came out that when he was in the Edmonton locker room, that Edmonton doesn't take LA super seriously compared to some of these other teams. And Fogle tried to use that as motivation for the team. Obviously, it didn't pan out. They lost 4 straight and lost in 6 games.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
But I mean, 96th percentile in defense. He's in the 77th percentile in offense, which shocker to me too, because he's a very good two-way guy. It seems like.
Oh yeah, his last season was his best season of his career. He had 46 points, averaging. He almost jumped 3 minutes in ice time per game. So LA was using him more, and he was a plus 36.
36.
Yeah,
That's crazy. That's nuts. Warren Fogle, if the LA Kings somehow make a run, even though I feel like they got worse,
he's going to be a big piece for them.
he's
Yeah,
going to be a huge piece, yeah. Last but not least on our list, I know we talked a little bit about him, but Dylan Sandberg of the Winnipeg Jets, we'll just touch on him briefly here because he's an analytical darling, as we've noticed. He is a guy that will give you substantial minutes. He can play in any situation you ask him for, and again, he's a guy that holds the Winnipeg Jets blue line together. And honestly, if we're being realistic, if he wasn't on Winnipeg, or if there was a situation where they couldn't retain him of some sort,
oh, he'd be a highly sought after free agent.
he would be.
Yeah.
Everybody, there'd be some people in the media or some fans that aren't really that, I guess, are casuals. Be like, why are teams willing to give him $6 million? Because he is a very, very, very good defenseman. And there's some guys out there in the league like Sandberg that their analytics show that they are a very good player. And overall, they don't get a ton of recognition. So just wanted to bring some recognition to these guys on the list because this wasn't some obvious guys. I wanted to throw Keller and Connor out there, but though everybody fucking says
I mean, those guys are like borderline superstars.
yeah. And even though, and I also wanted to throw Brett on there as well. Those are like,
I think Bratt has kind of become more well known. I think 2 years ago, if you would have called him underrated, I would agree with that. I think I always got frustrated because I didn't think people gave him enough credit, and I think this year, I think people get like, yeah, he's a great player.
like yeah, 80 points, 50 plus assists every single season. Great. And
Yeah.
yeah.